Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being here today. I am Pat Sandoz. I am the superintendent in the Sheridan School District. We are very proud to be hosting this event today. Just want to say thank you, first of all, to everybody for being here and let you know we've had a great start to the school year. Our staff has done an incredible job. They've done great work. We're so proud of them, and our kids have really responded, families have responded really well to being in person. So thank you so much. We have the great honor of introducing a few people to you. I have the great honor of doing that. I'm going to leave the best for last. I hope you all understand. I'd like to introduce our school board members in attendance. I've got Danny Stang, Mr. Danny Stang. Ms. Sally Daigle. We're fortunate to have our Commissioner of Education, Ms. Katie Anthus. Okay. We also have Attorney General Phil Weiser. We have our super senator, a great advocate and champion for Sheridan schools. Senator Jeff Bridges. You got me laughing there. I'm sorry. And without further ado, we're very fortunate to have him here. He's been a great champion for education as well. I'd like to introduce Governor Jared Polis.
Thank you, Superintendent Sandoz. We are so excited for you to host us here in Sheridan, and congratulations on all of the great work. Many of your families in your district really rely on, schools as the linchpin of the community, with families with single parents, both parents work, and really finding a way to do education safely in the COVID era is a challenge of our time, and you and Sheridan School District and your board and your teachers have really risen to that challenge, and I want to congratulate you. I also want to thank our great Attorney General Phil Weiser, Commissioner Anthus, and T-Mobile and the other partners that we're going to talk about here today. Really, the question before us is how we can make sure that every child has access to high-quality broadband, especially during the pandemic. But, even in districts and schools and in a time period when things are back at normal, that learning at home component is really more important than ever before. And, of course, in school districts where kids are back in school, there are still some families that aren't ready for their kid to return. Maybe it's a kid that lives with their elderly grandparents and doesn't want to take any increased risk. Maybe it's a kid that has pre-existing conditions that the parents are worried about them returning. And no matter where you live, in rural Colorado, in Sheridan School District, in anywhere in our state, you need to make sure that that access piece at home is there and in place. For if or when a school needs to convert to online only for a period of time to contain an outbreak early, if a kid isn't ready to return to school, and just to supplement the everyday learning for which broadband internet access is more important than ever before. In addition, during this crisis, many students in Colorado will experience periods of remote learning, and we know that there are still far too many kids at home that lack access to high-speed broadband. A recent survey from the Department of Education and the Education Initiative estimated about 65,000 Colorado students lack access to the internet. And while providers have worked hard to provide low-cost options and for districts and families, and there are still too many students without a connection in both urban Colorado and rural Colorado. Even worse, this access divide often falls along racial lines. Recent research from Colorado Future Center found that 2/3 of students that lack internet access in Colorado are Latino. In addition, we know that families experiencing homelessness, including many families in districts like Sheridan and DPS, have an even more difficult time with access to the internet and being able to maintain that continuity of study for their kids. Without broadband, without access, students are unable to participate in remote learning. They're often unable to do their homework if they're in school in person. And they're more likely to disengage and more likely to fall behind. That's why the state of Colorado, Attorney General's Office, Department of Education are taking steps today to ensure that every family in Colorado has access to broadband internet. And our great Attorney General Phil Weiser will speak about the T-Mobile news and commitment. I also want to recognize the many other internet providers across the state and the commitments that they are making to families during this crisis. Take Viaero Wireless on the Eastern Plains. When the stay-at-home order went into effect, Viaero converted hundreds of inexpensive smartphones into hotspots in just a matter of days. I visited the library district up in Greeley. They also have mobile hotspots that they were able to use COVID relief grant funds to purchase and are being deployed to low-income housing facilities to enable internet access. In the San Luis Valley, Cielo connected 200 students and teachers in the school districts of Del Norte, Saguache, and Center, where I visited last week, over the course of 2 weeks as the districts transitioned in the pandemic. And we also highlight the role of our rural electric co-ops. Delta Montrose Electric Association, through its subsidiary Elevate, connected 400 homes by offering free home installation, 2 free months of service for students and their teachers, and Elevate boosted the internet speeds to 1 gigabyte a second for every customer in their service area, no matter what they were able to pay. These are just a few examples of Coloradans stepping up in different parts of our state, in different areas, to make sure that every kid has access. It's not just providers. Colorado's also doing our part to ensure that every child has access to the internet. I couldn't be more proud to turn it over to our great Attorney General Phil Weiser, who has done so much to help students and families across the state.
Thank you so much, Governor Polis, and thank you, Superintendent Sandos, for putting this incredibly important conversation together. I want to pick up where our governor left off because we're in a challenging time right now. We're in a time that we need all the innovation and resilience that we can muster here in Colorado. And what we're seeing from our schools is Colorado at our best. This is not an easy time. We are having to develop approaches that include what's happening right here, hybrid learning. Some students, some of the time, are in school, other times they're at home. We've not done this before, but we're rising to this challenge. One of the ways we can build resilience is access to broadband, giving people learning opportunities, telemedicine opportunities, giving people access even to food and other basic needs. But the reality is a lot of people don't have broadband. A lot of students don't have broadband. And as our governor said, often it's the poorest. Often it's on racial lines, which means educational disparities can be made even worse during this time. Together, working with a great team from the governor's office, a number of whom are here today, from our office, people are here today, we're doing something about it. What we're doing is bringing together a partnership. Many providers are already stepping up. We negotiated with T-Mobile a terrific agreement that is providing free Wi-Fi hotspots and up to 100 gigabytes of annual data for 34,000 low-income households and access to internet-ready devices. This was part of a negotiation that we did with T-Mobile as we agreed that their merger with Sprint would, on balance, help Colorado. And today, we're getting the benefits of this. T-Mobile is launching this effort nationwide, and because of this commitment, we're going to benefit here in Colorado. But we're doing even more to address this online learning gap. We filed a petition today with the Federal Communications Commission. The Commission has this E-rate program to support access to broadband in schools. During this time, however, many people are learning in a classroom at home. They need access to broadband in order to do basic learning. The FCC has the ability to provide funds that support that learning. We want them to use that authority to help the many students here in Colorado who need that support. And so we filed this petition. The FCC has done some similar things before using its authority. We want them to act now during this time to give us the capability that we need. could make available millions of dollars to support this critical need. So I want to hand it over now to our great Education Commissioner, Katie Anthony, who's going to talk a little bit more about this program, and I want to really acknowledge, again, the wonderful work by our governor and his staff to make all this possible. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, everyone. I really want to start by thanking Superintendent Sandos and all of his colleagues around the state. Being a superintendent right now is certainly challenging work, and we appreciate so much all of our superintendents across the state doing everything they can to support students during this challenging time. I know you and your staff and teachers across our state have been working tirelessly to support all of our students, and I really appreciate it. I also want to thank Attorney General Phil Weiser for his commitment to expanding broadband opportunities. He came to me early on saying we need to work together and really work to solve some of these problems. The time is now because of all the challenges and the multiple ways we need our students to be able to learn in this time and age. The need for increased broadband access and Wi-Fi and highlighting our digital divide was really made clear in a partnership we had with the Colorado Education Initiative. Rebecca Holmes is here. I want to thank her and her staff for her work to really identify the problem. It's hard to solve the problem if you can't identify it. And so, as the governor said earlier, we really were able to pinpoint where extra support and Wi-Fi opportunities were needed. And so really appreciate her partnership. I also want to thank the Office of Information Technology, who's been working with us behind the scenes on this, helping us put this project together. So today I am pleased that the Department of Education is going to invest $2 million in addition to the T-Mobile. In addition to the T-Mobile agreements and all of the agreements we've been making with other providers, to really leverage broadband access and internet access to our families across the state of Colorado. So this funding comes from the emergency federal funding set aside for state-level activities through the Coronavirus Relief Aid and Economic Securities Act. And we will be reaching out to districts soon to let them know how they can apply for these funds. The districts can use these funds to purchase hotspots for low-income families in areas with service, but also to identify other creative opportunities. We know that in some of our rural communities, hotspots don't always work perfectly. So we need to identify some other creative opportunities to get towers and mobile trucks in those areas so that students have this opportunity. I've just heard from many parents and guardians and grandparents and families who are really having a tough time supporting their students through this time. And broadband access is now an essential school supply. It's a non-negotiable. And so we are really excited about this partnership, and it doesn't end here. We're going to keep working together to really do our part to close the digital divide. It seems like everything in 2020 is a little crazy, a little harder, a little more challenging, but it really does show our resilience in coming together and that we can solve problems together. So I'm really excited about this partnership. I thank everybody who's here, and I want to turn it over to probably one of our most important constituents, Roxana, who is a parent here in the Sheridan School District, to share her experience. Thank you.
Buenos días, mi nombre es Roxana Barraza y tengo dos hijos en las escuelas públicas de Denver y soy una madre líder de Stanford Children.
Good morning, my name is Roxana Barraza. I have two children in Denver Public Schools, and I'm a mother and a leader with Stanford Children.
Cuando empezó la pandemia me vi en una situación muy fea. En este momento no tenía acceso a un internet confiable. Estaba utilizando un servicio donde tenía que pagar $30 semanales.
When the pandemic started, I saw myself in a very ugly situation. During this time, I did not have access to reliable internet. I was using a service where I would have to pay $30 per week.
Luego llegué a un punto en que ese servicio no era suficiente para el trabajo que tenían que hacer mis hijos en casa. Luego no tuvieron acceso al internet por una semana.
We reached a point where this service wasn't enough for the work that my children had to do at school. And there came a time where they didn't have access for a week.
Un día estaba mirando la televisión y vi un programa de estudiantes de Xfinity que daba internet a las familias por solo $10 mensuales.
One day I was watching television and I saw an ad for a program for students with Xfinity that provided families with internet for $10 a month.
Eso fue un alivio ya que debido a la pandemia me habían disminuido las horas en mi trabajo y hasta el día de hoy he utilizado ese mismo paquete de Xfinity y ha salvado la educación de mis hijos.
This was a relief because due to the pandemic, my hours had been cut at work. And up to this day, I still continue to use that same package from Xfinity, which has saved my children's education.
Por eso estoy muy emocionada de estar aquí apoyando al gobernador en su plan de darle acceso a internet a todas las familias en Colorado.
That is why I'm very excited to be here supporting the governor in his plan to provide internet access to all the families in Colorado.
Esto logrará que todos los estudiantes del estado tengan acceso a sus clases en línea y puedan seguir sus estudios adelante. Muchas gracias al gobernador Polis.
This will achieve that all students in our state have access to their online classes and are able to advance all of their studies. Thank you very much, Governor Polis.
Ahora le paso esto al senador Bridges, el representante del distrito.
And now I hand it over to Senator Bridges, who represents our district.
Hi, everyone. I'm State Senator Jeff Bridges. Welcome to Senate District 26, the greatest Senate district in Colorado. Ever since COVID hit, I have been reaching out to, been having conversations with, some might say I have been bugging anyone that I could think of about the digital divide right here in Senate District 26. And when we think about the digital divide, we often think about the urban-rural divide. But according to the numbers, there are more families right here on the Front Range without access to internet than in all of rural Colorado combined. And that divide falls along income lines. And in Colorado, we already have achievement gaps. The gap between the achievement in schools from rich kids and poor kids. And we have only seen that achievement gap grow because of COVID. And one of the reasons for that is that online learning requires the ability to get online. And if you're homeless, it's tough to get a cable connection if you live in your car. Homelessness, immigration status, credit history, all of these barriers have created a digital divide right here on the Front Range that is rarely talked about. But it is causing more of our kids to fall behind. And so I am incredibly grateful today to the work done by Governor Polis and his team, by community members, by the Attorney General, and by folks at the Colorado Department of Education to take this major step forward in making sure that every Colorado kid has the ability to learn online. Thank you.
So we'll take some questions in a moment. So I think you're seeing here really a constellation between several different areas of work. The Attorney General, the excellent settlement work with T-Mobile, the benefit that plan will have, the steps that Comcast and Infinity are already taking, as our parent Roxana eloquently talked about, a commitment to under $10 a month access for families. That's, of course, those who live in a Comcast service area. And, of course, the Department of Education now announcing directing some of the COVID relief dollars to increase internet access, looking at different platforms and different technologies. We've got to see how a hotspot device, which could look like this is a microphone box, but it's a similar device like this, usually can have a significant range. So if there's a low-income housing complex, you might get 20, 30, 40 families that are able to have free Wi-Fi access from one hotspot, depending on the density of the housing. And then looking at other technologies, including towers and mobile trucks, all of which are already in use in our state, all of which will be in even greater use going forward. I also want to add this has been an area that the COVID Relief Fund, helpcoloradonow.org, has also supported in terms of local community nonprofits that are developing hotspots, usually associated with low-income housing in their communities. So with that, we'll be happy to take some questions.
Right, two questions. So first, I know we're talking about the 2020-2021 school year, but internet obviously is now a huge part of the school supplies that kids need. So what's the plan after this? Because it just seems like we'll continue to move more and more digital, and will there be options to extend this program?
Yeah, these are just the first steps. Out of necessity, which breeds innovation, we have in the pandemic an even greater need for something that the overall trend has been increasing the importance of over time. So I think you'll see additional steps that we take in partnership with community nonprofits. Many, I highlighted the Delta Montrose Co-op, many electric co-ops that are getting into the high-speed internet business, and of course the continued effort by the state to make sure that we successfully bridge the digital divide and that every family has access going forward.
Cool. And then my second question is, I know you guys touched on
I think Phil Weiser wants to
I
address
was
that
gonna
one as
add
well.
on that first one, along with 30 other state AGs. Oh, sorry. 39 attorneys general joined together under leadership, me and some other states, to call on Congress to provide continual funding that would include for a so-called lifeline service. Because right now, there's not a robust funding capability for people to have broadband, whether they're homeless, whether they're low income, what have you. That's got to change, and federal action can be a part of that change as well, and we've called on Congress to make that change.
Did you have a follow-up question?
yeah, and then I have one other question. So I know you talked about towers and
Yeah.
mobile trucks helping.
Yeah.
Because that's part of the problem. Even if people have access to a hotspot, if they're in a rural area, it might not even work. So when you talk about the $2 million to help facilitate
Yeah.
those towers and other creative options, does it feel like that's still enough money?
No, of course it's not enough, but it's a good start. And I would add that even in rural areas, the least expensive option of hotspots are still be very effective. So if you go to, for instance, Fort Morgan and visit low-income housing there, you'll see that it has the density where, again, you might serve 8 or 10 or 12 families with a device. Now, where people are more spread out, you need other options, and that's where you get into satellite, where you get into towers. But of course, as we indicated, this is an enormous issue here in Sheridan, in Denver, in the urban interface, and it's also an issue in rural Colorado. I'll have Commissioner Anthus address the start of the program with the $2 million and how, of course, more is needed over time.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I would just echo what the governor said, which is just as this is the first step, and we need to look across the whole state and figure out what next steps are needed. But if we can solve some of these initial problems, we're going to have more information about how to solve the larger problems.
If I can just add a little flavor to that, which is how fortunate we are to have a governor and a commissioner of education who gets how important this is. There are a lot of states that are not as innovative, not doing the sorts of things we're talking about today. We definitely have more to do, but Colorado is now positioned as a national leader on this issue because of their leadership.
How much is the settlement with T-Mobile, and what are the legal qualifications for this, given that, and I'm looking at this rural issue here, if you bring a satellite mobile towers, it's going to serve more than just low-income families. It could reach into businesses and other places. The towers don't know how much people need.
So the criteria is based on free and reduced school lunch eligibility. The commitment is free Wi-Fi hotspots and 100 gigabytes of annual data for 34,000 low-income households, as well as access to low-cost internet-ready devices, whether they be tablets or laptops. That's the T-Mobile commitment. As I think was the other question, that will not necessarily address the full issue, but we're going to work with school districts to make sure that we can at least address that part. We are absolutely in a game of catch-up here, but we now also have a catalyst in this moment to address an issue that is of real urgency to our students.
You don't have a dollar figure on the settlement?
They put it in terms of deliverables, not in terms of dollars.
And just to play around with those numbers a little bit, the estimate from the Education Initiative in the department were about 65,000 Colorado families don't have high-speed access at home for their kids, with kids in school. This number, served under the T-Mobile program, is about half that, so it's in the 30,000s. Now, that doesn't mean that it meets half the need, because some of the people that the T-Mobile service will benefit might already have access, but it'll save those families, $10, $20, $30 a month, which is also a big deal. As we heard from Roxana, going from a $30 a week program to a $10 a month program, and what that means in terms of the ability to support your family. So it will provide access for families that don't have it, and also save money for families that are currently struggling to pay, $20, $30 a month. And I also want to thank Senator Bridges for his leadership in Sheridan School District, and also really one of the biggest champions of education down in the state legislature, as well as his commitment to helping to bridge the digital divide both in the urban and rural parts of Colorado. Thank you.